Hello everyone and welcome back. This is Daniel and here we are again, continuing with our character creation tutorial series. So we just finished baking of our normal map texture. The mesh looks very clean and very detailed now. I feel like the quality is really good on all this. Now we just need to set up the shaders and do well, the textures. So, before we start, let's just clean up our scene a bit. This is a bit of an important step. Wait, I'm in the wrong file even. Let's be in a used file. Let's not mess up any of our old data. It's basically the same. I just want to work in a new file. That's very important because we're going to delete now all the objects that we don't need anymore. And you don't want to do this if you only have this one copy of the file. So make sure you have a separate copy of this file and let's work there to make sure not to lose anything. And I did this mistake before, so I had to re-record this part. There's one more little thing we need to be careful with. Lots of our low poly parts, they still have modifiers applied to them that reference the high-res stuff, like the helmet here, for example. So we need to apply these before we can delete the other ones. And let's see, we will only leave the mirror modifiers. Those are the ones that we can still have, of course, but we'll check through all of this, and wherever there's a shrink wrap or anything else that sort of deforms the mesh, we'll go ahead and apply this. Yeah, very important. Otherwise, as soon as you delete the high-res stuff, it will just deform back to what it used to be. Yeah, you can also see here in the outliner this little icon that just indicates which parts have modifiers at all, so it's easier to find them. And while we're at it, just to clean up a little bit, we don't need the vertex groups on these anymore. So on these parts that have this little icon here, I'll just go ahead and delete these vertex groups, because later we'll be doing rigging and that would just get in the way. So now all of these parts have only mirror modifiers on them, if I'm not wrong. Mirror. So we have nothing to worry about here. Now we can go ahead and delete all the other collections. Delete the hierarchy here, delete all of our high-res parts, and here I'm just going to keep the cape for a while, in case we want to continue working on that a bit later. So there we go, the scene is now cleaned up and we'll move on to our material setup. Basically, we'll be using the inverted hull method, and if you're not familiar with it, maybe just look it up. The explanation is a bit difficult, it would take some time, so I'm not going to go too much into detail, but basically we will use 3 materials. The first 2 are just going to be the materials we use on the body. I'll create one for diffuse parts such as skin and the actually I would like to create 4 materials. One is going to be diffuse, one is going to be metallic, and I'm going to make one more for skin, because skin sometimes behaves a little bit differently. We might want to configure it a tiny bit, well, different to the other ones. So I'm just keeping that separate, but then the last one is going to be our outline. Set the outline material to an emission shader and just set the color to like a dark brown, something like this. And here's an important setting: activate backface culling, and that means that the back side of the faces will not be rendered. Now the last step that we need to do is, let's see, I actually want to start with a different part, something that has the mirror modifier on it. So what we'll do first is select everything, then select the part that we just set up materials for last, then I'll hit Ctrl L and press link materials. Now all these objects should have the same 4 materials on them. Now I'll select any part that has the mirror modifier on it, and I'll add solidify modifier. Here I'll set the offset to 1 and the thickness to something like wow, we can't really see that part. Should have chosen a part that's easier to see. But yeah, basically we'll choose something like 0.015. And then you want to flip the normals here and set the material offset to 3. And here as well the rim to, in case you have a rim, which I think on this part we actually have. Let's isolate this. You can easily see now what this would have done. Without the rim, this is what it would have looked like. With the rim, we get that part as well. And here you can basically select the material that goes on that section. Alright, there we go. So this is the modifier set up for all the parts where there is a mirror modifier, and the reason why I did this first is because we can now easily see all the parts that have a mirror modifier here just by that icon. So I'll in the outliner select all the parts that have a modifier icon with them, and then select the one that we added the outline to last. Then we can use Ctrl L and copy modifiers. Now all these parts should have a nice outline. Although we of course get some artifacts. Maybe this outline is a bit too thick. It's a bit unfortunate. Well, we might have to go in and adjust some, but you can also do one more thing. We could use thickness clamping, and I would use something like 0.75 in this case. Maybe that's too much. 0.6. 0.65 maybe. That just helps a little bit make this line more dynamic, and also helps in these spots where there's a lot of curvature. It just makes those places a bit thinner, and that kind of works well for us. So once again, select all these objects here, select the part last that we set up, and then copy the modifiers. Now the same settings should be on all parts. There we go. Unfortunately, you can't get rid of all artifacts. I mean, these are just some artifacts that you get with this method. But it's not too bad, really, if you think about it in the big picture. Now we need to do the same modifier for this part, for example. So I'll select the leg, then this part, then the leg, and copy the modifiers. Just make sure that you delete the mirror modifier from this particular one, because we didn't need the mirror modifier. And now we can go ahead and select all the parts that don't have any modifiers yet. These are the ones that are asymmetrical. Here too. This one, this one. And then we need to select this part last. Ctrl L, copy modifiers. And now you should have the modifiers and the materials on all parts, which sort of finishes the setup of the outline. Yep. There we go. Maybe the outline is a bit too thick still. A bit worried about that. But let's move on anyway. Now we need to think about the shaders themselves. Basically, in a shader editor, we'll first just deal with the diffuse one. That's basically the base shader, and the other two will just be like little modifications. Basically 99% the same, just a little bit different. And to get a good visualization of what this result looks like, we'll also go ahead and add a sun lamp, put this somewhere here, and switch to the rendered view. Let's turn this white quickly, and you have to also consider that the background light, the background color, does influence sort of your result. So be sure to, for good control, I would basically go ahead and turn that off. Well, basically, if you turn it on, it's just going to go brighter. So for now we'll turn it off to keep things under control. If that turns out to be a mistake, we'll think about it later. Next, here's some settings we can make. You have a choice to use shadows or not. I personally would love to have good shaders, but I don't have good experiences with that. We might be better off turning it off, but let's just keep it on for now and see where we get with that. You might want to go to your render settings and try to increase the shadow resolution here. Am I touching the right setting? I hope. Well, I forget which one it is. Let's just turn both of these up high, and that should give us some slightly more accurate shaders. And if we turn off soft shaders, that should help as well. Well, the sun lamp isn't really the best for this sort of thing. Yeah, I'm pretty sure the lower setting was the right one. It's just that shadows aren't very easy to calculate, and they will often lead to artifacts. You could go ahead and activate contact shadows that will make it a little bit better, or you could use a different type of lamp. Shouldn't have changed these many settings. Now let's undo most of that. Alright, we're back to default settings. But I think I'm just going to turn them off for now, and we'll test them later. It's difficult to judge it anyways if you don't really have anything to compare it to. Alright, so what we want to do now is, now that we're in this view, also just before I forget, I think we need to turn up the brightness of the sun a little bit. Why don't we get there we go. Light settings. I don't want anything to be sort of completely white, but then at the same time it shouldn't be like a mid-gray either. And also, sorry that I'm jumping around quite a bit. Here's some very important render settings. Make sure you go to color management in the render settings and switch from filmic to standard. Because if you want to set your colors here, this is going to completely distort the value of those colors. So make sure you pick here the standard view transform, because only then you'll get the accurate colors. Of course, this is not often used. This is not really used for realistic renders, so it's turned off by default. But it's necessary for these kind of stylized pieces. So I think now we have a good brightness, and the rest is dark, of course, because it's in shadow. And now we'll begin to look at the shader itself. Let's begin with the helmet, maybe. Just make sure you put the light in a good spot where you can see the shadow area as well. What we'll do now is delete the shader itself here, and we'll add a diffuse node, diffuse BSDF. Turn that to white, and that by itself would just look like a diffuse shader. But now we'll use a converter, and we'll convert shader to RGB. Then we'll create another shader, which is the emission shader, and connect the color to that, and connect the emission one. Now this gives you exactly the same result, but the only difference is that now you have here control over the color. You could now put in here a color ramp, and now we can basically adjust this as if it was, you know, an image with color. And here you go in and basically choose what you want for your stylized look. You can have a sharp edge like this. You could switch this to constant. Then you get the sharpest edge possible. I think, yeah, you do need this though. So here you can just with one slider basically get the position. I think we'll do that maybe. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So do that in black and white, and we'll add color in a different node again. Oh, by the way, we still haven't used our normal map data. So all you need to do here really is add an image texture, load your normal map, make sure it's set to linear color space, then go to Shift A, add vector normal map. We need to connect this to here, and then just connect the normal map, and this should work out just fine, and you can see all the detail that we're missing is now in. By the way, if this all looks a bit too rough to you, you can of course go in and set this to ease, and then just make your transition a bit softer. Now we do get some artifacts. I should look into this. Maybe we have to change a little bit on the setup, use better textures. I'll look into that, and if I have a good answer to that, I'll bring it up in the next part. But either way, this is first of all what we would get, what we start with. But then of course you want to add color, and the way we do that is basically to use a color mix node, mix RGB, and put this value, this black and white map, into the factor input. This basically allows you to now blend between two colors. You could set your shade here and your light areas here. Now that would of course only allow you control over one color, and that's not very useful. And also don't forget, we want to do some texturing and have different colors throughout this. So basically what we'll want to do is have a texture, image texture, go into here, into the light area, I guess. Actually no, let's switch from mix to multiply. And now we'll put our color input to here, and then we'll just multiply it by something. And that is going to be a color like this one. So just a medium color, but slightly tinted. And since we don't have our color texture just yet, I'll for now replace it with just a color, no, not this, just a color RGB, so that we can see something. This is going to be just, let's just pick a blue or something. Sorry, this shouldn't be there. And this is what you'll get. Wait, did we? Oh, I see. Basically, we need to flip this around. White needs to be at the bottom and black needs to be here. So now we take this color and multiply this on top of it. So so yeah, in this region it is white, so that means that in this region this color is multiplied to it, and in this region it's black, so in this region the color is passed on as is. So it's a bit complicated, the logic behind it, but the result is that you, whatever color you pass into here, you get a shaded version of that now. And you can even change your tint. You could make the shadow area more saturated or less saturated. Oh, I'm in the wrong mode. So you make it more saturated, less saturated. You can pick the color of your shadow here, and it's going to adapt to everything. So for example, if I take a blue, it's still going to be blue. So whatever color you put in, it's basically just going to try to tint it bluish with this setup. So that's very useful. It's just going to be now hook up any color texture, and this setup will figure out the rest for us. Now moving on, we'll just leave this here for a second. Let's make this just a nice bright color for now. Oh, that was the multiplication one. Let's set this back maybe. Here I'll do some nice color, whatever. You can really do something bright and make it pop any color you like. And we'll move on to another feature of our shader setup that I want to add. And this one is a little bit complicated. I have to look at a setup on basically I have to look at my notes myself because I forget how it's done. But what you want is you go to your input nodes and pick a geometry node. We'll basically do a rim light effect, but not based on light, but based on shader. We then go to vectors and take a vector transform. We'll set this one not to object but to camera. And I just want to show you what these do. So so instead of just making you follow what I do, basically the normal output here gives you just the normal information of the faces. So everything that is pointing upwards will have more blue. Everything that's downwards has a -1 in the blue channel. So it's really just aligned with these axes. You can even see the color of the axis red X So here on this side is red, here it's -1 red. So it's just really the direction of the face that you have on your screen. We can now transform that though into sort of the camera space, and what that does is, oh, we have to put this there. It's now based on your camera view, which means that, yeah, well, you can pretty much see the result. You can see what is facing towards the right from your camera at any time. And now we need one more node that's very cool, which is again in the vector nodes, I believe. It's called the normal node. And if you put this in here and you take not the normal, I mean here you could pick a normal, but we're interested in the dot product, I believe. And what this does now is it lets you sort of pick a gradient across these normals. And so with that you can basically go ahead and choose your rim light wherever you want to put it. So we could put it around here, have it as a nice edge, maybe a bit to the top, like so. And then, well, I kind of would like it to be kind of across the entire back. Something like that, maybe. Anyway, so now we have this again as a white and black mask, but it's still very soft. So what we'd like to do is go in, and we have various choices here actually. I feel like the map range node would be quite useful in this case. Basically you can remap things with it, and we could say from -1 to 1 we want to remap that to anything we like. So here we go ahead and choose basically does that help us really? It's a bit hard to control probably, but the good thing about this is that you could even go into sort of the negative range, which would be difficult otherwise. It's a bit tough to explain, I'll be honest, but maybe I have a better idea. This is going to be a bit more useful for you guys. Since now at the moment the range of this gradient that goes around here is from -1 to 1, I would like to sort of bring it into the visible range. So I'm going to use a map range node after all, but our setup is just going to be temporary. So we'll bring -1 to 1, we'll remap that to 0 to 1. And with that setup, we can now go to our converter, not the clamp, color ramp, and now we should be able to easily, we can set that to constant. We can pick now anywhere how much light we want this rim light to give. So something like here should be very nice. We can put this really to the back, and we can choose how much of the rim light shines through. This could go really far, this could go all the way to the front, or it could just be like in the back and not be visible. So this is very useful, I feel. I just actually came up with this on the fly, but that seems to be a good idea. You could really have a strong rim light through this. Here you choose your direction, here you just choose the intensity, and now it's just going to be about how we mix this together. And that's of course again going to be a mix node. So let's go to color, mix RGB. This is of course our base, and this is again going to be our mask. So let's put this into the factor. But this time we have to think again about how we want to mix it together, and there's again many ways how we could do it. We could, for example, just add color here and make this something like a bright color, something like a white. We can choose the brightness, of course. If we make that completely black, it has no influence. If we make it completely white, it's just going to make the color white. We could also choose something with a color, and that's just going to light things up. So for now, I think this will be a good idea. If we want to have more control over this, we could also plug in here a texture that's based off our original texture. And you know what, in fact I think we have to do that, because here we get the shadows as well. So if I can show here what I mean, Well, maybe that's what you want, so the shading line is going to be visible in this. Is it an issue? Another thing we could do is if we do this to our color directly, this is now not going to have any shadows on it. It's just going to be the color that was lightened up, if you know what I mean. So that's going to be the lit color, and no matter what color we put in as a base, it's just going to be the lighter version of that color. And then we can use here a mix node instead and just fully replace any color in that rim light. So here this is now overriding the shadows even. And I think this looks a little bit better, so personally I think we'll go with this instead. Here you basically just set up the intensity of the lightness if you want, and here like the tint that you get, and here you'll have to input your color texture once we set that up. And yeah, so by the way, I said that maybe we'll do a little bit of a different setup for skin and metallic. Basically the difference between these materials in this kind of stylized look is just the gradient of this. Metallic could have some slightly different gradient, something like this, to give it a bit more of an interesting look. And for the skin, I think we just might need more reddish of a tint, because there is more subsurface scattering and you get sort of color going into the skin and coloring the rest in a sort of reddish tint. So I'm basically adding this here just to have control over that. So with that all set up, this is all we really need for the diffuse part of this. I think we're pretty much done. So this is our rim light. We could even do comments, I believe. I don't know how you add a comment to Blender. Layout, frame. Yeah, I don't know. So this is apparently whatever. Can we group that? Alright, let's just stop. I'm not too familiar with these kind of extra features. But yeah, I know how to make it at least work. Anyway, let me not start to search for things now. So the last thing we need to do in the next video is to paint our character, and in that process we'll also maybe add some outlines and these sort of things. Speaking of which, I think we might also, I'm not quite sure yet how we're going to treat the outlines on the texture. I'll think about that a little bit and bring you the answer in the next video. I'm just afraid that if we put the outline directly into this texture, maybe like it would still show up in these bright areas, and I'm not sure if you want that or not. Maybe it would be nicer to have the outlines in a separate texture and make it completely override anything. So really plug it in here at the very end so that it is really, you know, strong. But anyway, that's for the next video. So at the moment we're left with a very blue character. At least we can choose the color. Set it back to something like a white. Alright, there we go. Yep. So I think that's going to be all for this video, and in the next one we'll look at all the rest. Thank you guys as always for watching, and I'll see you next time.